400, 400 speed film.
It should be okay.
It's got a cool menu.
Welcome. That's where we need to go, back there to a biker bar.
Alrighty, here we go, driving into Hurricane Mitch on our way to Key West. Further south we're going here, the harder the rain is starting to come down.
As rain begins to beat against the car with the impact of 44 Magnum slugs.
Shut up, Todd.
Force winds begin to rock the car.
Alright, enough sound effects. According to the radio, they've got tropical storm warnings out right now. So, now we're coming up onto a bridge up here. Boy, I bet he's having fun. All right, Windley Key.
Which key?
Windley Key is where we're at now.
Windley Key. Should take the placement so we know where we are.
Yeah, we should take placemats. Alrighty, well, we'll get some a little later. Alright, we're actually in on the causeway now. Smile, Jeff. Nah, good enough. As you can see, we're the only people driving south to Key West. Everybody else is leaving.
I can feel the wind pulling the car.
You can see the, yeah, why don't you watch the road? And
I'm having so much fun. Any driver can watch the road.
Watch the road. Yeah, the storm started to pick up a lot now. The wind has picked up quite a bit and the rain has picked up. Visibility is not real good. Thunder and lightning out now.
Your Tropicana Twisted is true and used in a Tropicana Twisted. With a twisted kind of refreshment. That's what I'm talking about.
I must be in that drink.
Don't sing, drink.
Totally twisted.
Come into the marketplace and pick up the refreshing new flavors of Tropicana Twisted.
Quick picked up intensity again. Definitely a lot heavier than it was before. It's coming down really, really hard now.
All of us are due to be wiped away in a watery grave. Will be current residents of Davy Jones Lock.
You're going to have some 45, 50 mile an hour winds, some heavy thunderstorms, possibly some tornado activity, so stay close. We'll keep you informed.
The launch winds are expected to be 40 to 50 with gusts to 60 or more. Rains 4 to 8 inches. Flooding is expected in low-lying areas. The storm is expected to pass through the area tonight with the most severe conditions in the early morning. The storm probably will have passed by the middle of the day on Thursday. At 5 p.m. today, which has already passed a little bit for those of you who like to keep track of that time thing, Salvation Army will open as a shelter at Glen Archer Elementary School at the corner of White and United Streets. City bus drivers will take police to people to shelter when asked. People living...
Section going out of the road. Good bump. We lost our radio station.
There's another section out.
Yeah, but that's the section that was kind of blown up, maybe. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to see that, are we? We've got handy videos. I found the room.
Only strong winds near the coast if there was a heavier shower. The east coast, windy this morning, especially offshore, very windy. Risk of severe weather through noon.
Weather changed pretty quickly. Now it's sunshiny, blue skies.
He's getting sucked away. Pull him back. He's getting sucked away.
You're on holiday or in a good mood. You should be. A lot of you worked hard to get here, especially the last 2 weeks, got everything in order. You saved up some money, paid off a few bills, got your credit cards down to what, 30, 40,000? So you can jack it back up again. You know you're not paying that interest off. So I've been asked questions like, Louis, are those real coconuts on the trees? It's like, yeah. These are true questions. How many sunsets are there going to be tonight? Huh? That day I almost quit. I stuck with it. Do you live here? Like, no, fly out of Midway every day. Yeah, we live here. To your left, ladies and gentlemen, North US 1, the only road that'll take you in and out of here. As most of you know, you got the Gulf of Mexico on one side, the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. How many bridges from here to the mainland? Anybody? Several? Okay, that's good. Any other guesses? 40. Wow, 40 is really close. 42 bridges. The longest out of 42, the 7-mile bridge. I have an Old Town Trolley souvenir for the Netherlands gentleman there, yeah. We ask questions and correct answers, or at least answers that come close. I'll get that to you. 42 bridges, the longest, the 7-mile bridge, which is 6.8 miles, not quite 7. Let me mention this to you. Some of you have the schedules and the maps. This is basically a detour. Normally I wanted to take you straight because of the storm last night. They have South Roosevelt Boulevard closed off. We cannot get to stop number 9, which would have been for the East Martello Museum, or stop number 10, which was the beach stop. But I do have 11, which is another beach stop, okay? So there is no stop 9, there is no stop 10. That might have been 8. But this is Flagler Avenue, named after Henry Morrison Flagler. Here's a neat wall on your left, made out of coral rock and conch shells. And all the coral is protected. You cannot take coral from the reef. Yeah, about 5 miles outside of Key West, we have North America's only living coral reef. It's approximately 176 miles long, stretches south of Miami, running towards the dry Tortuga Islands. Okay, the dry Tortugas, a chain of islands about 70 miles west. West is in front of you. On one of those islands, there's a national park you can visit anytime called Fort Jefferson. This is where Dr. Samuel Mudd was imprisoned for setting the leg of John Wilkes Booth, and he shot President Lincoln. Fort Jefferson is a Union fort. Now this is strange. Key West was occupied by the North during the Civil War. In 1822, the government sent Union troops down here to rid the island of pirates. They did their job. The Union decided to stay, and then the Civil War erupted. Since they were already down here, they took a stronghold on the city, protected the Gulf waters. There was no battle. In America, I know we have some people not from America, if you don't know American history, we had the Civil War between the northern states and the southern states, and even though we were way down south, we were occupied by the northern states. In fact, living here, you'd have to leave, go north to do so. This is a northern type song. Pick hands on it. If not, I'll sing you a Buffett tune. So it's, there it is. Okay. So anyway, that's the Union song, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. I will show you a Union fort a little bit later. The next couple of days, the weather is predicted to be beautiful. Maybe you'll get a chance to go out to the reef that we talked about. Take a glass bottom boat out there today, not today, but maybe tomorrow, Saturday. Do some snorkeling. There's a lot to do on the ocean. Kayaking. It's a lot of fun. You'll kayak the back country. Very quiet. You'll see marine life, wildlife like herons, egrets. Sunset sails are very popular. Jet skis are for the more adventurous types. Parasailing. So we talked about the reef. It was responsible for the island's first great industry called the wrecking. It was also known as the salvaging industry. It began in the early 1800s. No lighthouses, no channel markers at the time. Many sailing ships would wreck on the reef. They didn't see where they were going. Locals would see it from their rooftops, and they would yell, "Wreck ashore." You heard this echo in the Old Town area. When you heard this, you knew it was time to go out, save lives, collect cargo, wine, silk, furniture. There was jewelry. Brought it all back to Key West, divided amongst the wrecking courts. Every Saturday morning downtown in Mallory Square, they would auction it off. In 1830, because of shipwrecking, Key West became the wealthiest city per capita in the United States. We remained the wealthiest city for about 50 years. The last wrecking court closed in 1921. Here on your left, the Key West High School. On the front lawn, probably the largest conch shell you're ever gonna see. That's the queen conch. Of course, as you know, hopefully that's not real. That's just welded by the high school welding class, in fact. But I have a real conch up here, everybody. This is the queen conch, like you may have just seen on the high school lawn. The meat that lives inside the shell is what we eat. It's a snail, right? You pull the snail out. You want to tenderize it, a very tough meat, and then prepare it the way you want. We have conch fritters. It's deep fried like a hush puppy. Conch steak, cracked conch salad, conch chowder. And then once you take the snail out, you cut the top off. Okay? You blow it. Get a horn sound, kind of sound like this. All right. It's a $16 course. What do you want? It worked this morning about 9 o'clock. You know, people were still waking up, still had a hangover from last night. Okay, no, these work for sure. Called the conch horn. You can buy one of these, $9, $10, and you'll find them all over the place. Turning on the Bertha Street. Here on your right, popular Cuban restaurant, B's Restaurant. This little place right here. It's a local place. You want to try some Cuban food? That'll be the place. There's a lot of nice Cuban restaurants. El Cibone, very popular restaurant on Catherine Street. So we talked about shipwrecking, made us the wealthiest city per capita. The cigar industry was a very profitable business. Started in 1831, a shipwrecked Englishman named William Wall started to import loose-leaf Cuban tobacco. Cuban laborers. Started out as a cottage business. Eventually, it became a major industry. By 1877, Key West had 166 cigar factories. Together, they were hand-rolling over 100 million cigars a year. 100 million. That's about 375,000 hand-rolled cigars each day. Out of control for 12 hours. Burned down most of the houses and cigar factories. Eventually, that business would come to an end. Downtown, there's still a couple of people hand-rolling cigars. There's a really neat store. It's called Casa, It's all Cuban-influenced stores. If you're still with me, once we get down there, I'll show it to you. And so you might want to pick up an El Hemingway, maybe Coronado, get a cigar. But that industry would come to a close. Right now, all we have is tourism. Okay, we're to lose you, we're in trouble. We can also go back to smuggling. That was pretty good in the early 60s, but that's a little dangerous. If you were here last night, you heard the winds, felt a little rain. You can see the puddles everywhere. That was just from a little depression. So you can imagine what this island looked like during Hurricane George. It's basically underwater. We lost about 20% of our canopy, of our trees. That's what we lost. We fared very well. They estimate about 38 million pounds of trees. There's the White Street Bishop here. You can walk out, ride a bicycle. Some people call it the unfinished highway to Cuba. Yeah, just an old pier. Now remember we talked about Key West being occupied by the North during the Civil War. Coming up on your left is a Union fort. Everybody, the West Martello Tower, built 1861. Today, we're going to use it as a garden club. Now, as you drive by the fort, we might notice some of the walls missing. After the fort became obsolete, they used it for target practice. There was no battle, so they shot at it themselves. Here's a more family-type beach. Claretig's Memorial. He was a former commissioner. All of our sand imported. We do not have natural sand. And it's in pretty bad shape because of the storm. We're going to get some more, maybe from the Bahamas. We're talking about Haiti, maybe the Dominican Republic. $22 to $25 a ton, which is expensive. So we ask you enjoy the beaches, but when you leave, if you don't mind, kind of shake your towels out. Really good, empty your shoes, okay? Leave the sand. The conch shell that I was blowing earlier, we import these from the Bahamas, South America. If any of you get caught taking one, there's a $500 fine. And that's a federal law. They're not as plentiful as they used to be. Now that's only if the snail is alive, if it's in it. If it's empty and you see one, then you can bring it home. Here's one of our nicest resorts, the Casa Marina Marriott, built by Henry Flagler and his Florida East Coast Railroad. Made his millions in the oil business. Henry Flagler and John D. Rockefeller, they were partners in Standard Oil. He loved trains. Pioneered his way from Jacksonville, Florida, down to Miami with the rail line. From Miami, he would bring trains to Key West. He began construction. 1905, it was completed in 1912. When he got down here with the train, there was a week-long celebration, but there was no place suitable to house the passengers. This is what Flagler did. He promised the people of Key West he would build the Casa Marina. He never lived to see the final construction. Died in 1913. This was completed 1921. Now this is Charlie stop number 11. It's near the beach, or maybe you want to get off at the Casa. Have
railroad from Jacksonville to Key West. He liked to stay first class. Now sometimes, you know, because he was paving new ground, there wasn't always hotels there to stay at. So what he'd do is he'd just build one there so that he'd have the accommodations he was accustomed to. He actually built about 7 hotels and resorts from Jacksonville to Key West. Now the Casa Marina was finished in the 1920s and operated in grand style when it opened up into the Depression years. 1935, the storm and hurricane back then, Isla Morada, destroyed his railroad, and then people stopped coming down. The Levy Guest closed the Casa Marina down for about 40 years, went unused. The only time it was really occupied, well, some during World War II and the Cuban Missile Crisis, the military occupied it some, but I mean, as far as paying customers and that, not that we don't consider the government paying customer, but anyhow. It wasn't until the 1970s the Marriott bought it up and added to it. Well, folks, I bet you've been wondering about these trolleys here, haven't you? Yeah. The first trolley was built here in Key West in 1885 by Eduardo Gatto, a cigar manufacturer owner. And he used these trolleys to get his workers to and from work. Now this first trolley was pulled by a very big single mule back then. Up until 1926, they replaced them with electric streetcars. In 1931, they burned all the trolleys down. Can you imagine? Well, we lost all the tobacco industries, the Cuban cigar manufacturing industry to Tampa, so I guess they figured they didn't need them anymore. Anyhow, to continue on here, we went from being the richest city per capita to filing bankruptcy. We were the only city to tear up our charter back then. We lost all our industries. We lost the wrecking business. We lost the cigar business, the spongy business, the salt farms. We lost everything. We ended up unable to make money to earn a living. So the federal government is the one that suggested we try the tourist industry. And that's what we opened up the first year as a tourist city in the winter of 1934 and 35. That's what got us going. We're still going today. Actually, I'm going to go across the street, this next sign. This will be the stop for the southernmost point, like everybody's ready to go. They have, actually, if you want to get your picture here, because we can't drive by, they got the road blocked. So if you want pictures, the 90 miles to Cuba buoy is right here. We come by here every 25 minutes.
As we get out into the intersection, you can look down there and see the yellow, red, and black buoy. Here in Key West, we are 90 miles north of Cuba. We are 157 miles from Miami. We are 85 miles further south than Brownsville, Texas. And two of the most common questions I get asked when we go past the southernmost point, or when I discuss the southernmost point, is number one, Keith, are we really closer to Cuba than we are the mainland of the United States? Yes, indeed, we certainly are. And the second most asked question, Keith, can we see Cuba from here in Key West? No, we cannot see Cuba because of the curvature of the Earth. Coming up here on the left-hand side of the trolley, it'll be on the right if we are able to turn down this street up here. It's been blocked most of this previous week here. Coming up, towering above the trees, is the Key West Lighthouse. This lighthouse over here dates back to 1847. The original lighthouse here on the island was destroyed in the hurricane of 1846. You are invited to climb the 88 spiral steps all the way up to the top for a panoramic view of all of Key West, just like those people up there have. It is open daily from 9:30 to 4:30 as one of our attractions.
Yeah, he moved in Todd's way.
Who came up to me one afternoon and she asked me point blank, how many cats are there on the Hemingway property? And I told her 65 and they all have number tags. Well, as she started to turn and walk away, I stopped her. I didn't let her believe it either, because it's not true. I'd like to show you some newly restored shotgun houses, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to show you what they look like when they're brand new. They're coming up just ahead around this corner on the left-hand side. You can see they are very pretty little houses. If you've been wondering about the price of real estate, however, these start at about $750,000. That's right. Now, there's a very good reason for that. The entire original island, the entire Old Town section of Key West has been declared a historical district, just the same way they did with Old Charleston, South Carolina, a few years ago. Now, folks, here in Old Town, if you want to tear down your house and rebuild it, you can't do that. It has to be taken from you by a natural disaster, fire, flood, hurricane, something like that. Then once it is taken from you, it in fact takes about 3 years to get a building permit. Well, if you look at that whole great big picture, that $750,000 is not a great deal amount of money. Regular tour route from here. This is another little detour. I'd like to show you something, folks, in my off time. I actually do a lot of woodworking. I've mentioned this type of wood before, by the way, on this tour. The West Indian mahogany tree. It's where all that pretty red mahogany wood comes from that they build furniture, boats, things like that out of. I'd like to show you what these trees actually look like in their natural state. Now, these are all over the city, by the way. I'm going to have to get around this left-hand turn first, called Perkins and Sons Chandlery. Back in the 1800s, the way they accomplished sponge fishing, they took a 3-pronged rake. They mounted that on the end of a very long pole. They looked down into the water through glass-bottom buckets and selected their sponges. With the rakes, they just hooked them and brought them up into the boats. Well, in 1890, Greek divers came into Key West using the diving helmet method, the kind of diving where they actually walked along the bottom of the ocean with those big lead boots. This triggered an all-out war down here. In fact, the locals believed the Greeks were killing the sponge beds by walking through them. The final blow in the sponging war was delivered here in 1910, however, by a microorganism called the red tide. It began to sweep through our waters, killing off our sponges. The Greeks were frustrated enough after 20 years of fighting, so they moved up to Tortuga Springs to continue their diving operations up there. Since that time, in fact, about 25 or 30 years ago, the sponge beds at Tortuga Springs have died off, and ours have regrown. We're back in the commercial sponge business again. We're very, very proud of that. Now, also, a few years ago, there was a Caribbean singer-songwriter here who happened to have gotten his professional start right on this island. You might already know who I'm talking about. His name is indeed Jimmy Buffett. Well, back then, he wrote a song called There's a Woman Going Crazy on Caroline Street. I'm about to make a left-hand turn over the very section of Caroline Jimmy was actually referring to in his song. Now, this was at one time a very rough neighborhood. In fact, on the right-hand side, along this waterfront, this used to be the heart of the Key West shrimp fleet. If you remember, however, in the 1940s and 50s, we had a large portion of Navy here as well. You can imagine how rough this area got every single day. This is not true down here anymore. As a matter of fact, as I make this right-hand turn
folks, look straight out the front windshield again. You'll be able to see that the shrimping fleet have indeed all moved away from this little area. So this part of town is now simply referred to as Landsat Village. Here in Landsat, you'll find such well-known restaurants as the Half Shell Raw Bar. Also, the Turtle Crawls restaurant is located down here as well, and both of those are very well known for their fresh seafood. The word crawl, incidentally, is Dutch African, spelled K-R-A-A-L. Simply translated, it means pen or corral. It's where we used to keep the green sea turtles before they were making the seafood, long before they were on the endangered species list. Now, folks, if you're thinking about or wondering what you're going to have for dinner, I'd like to recommend my very favorite restaurant. Look to the left across Caroline Street, that tiny little white building with the natural wood door is Peppy's Cafe. That's the oldest existing cafe in South Florida. And please don't let the appearance of Peppy's fool you. The food right there is outstanding. It always has been. That's where President Truman seemed to wind up whenever he snuck away from Secret Service, right there in Peppy's. I'd like to share a very special portion of Key West history with you. Again, look straight out the front windshield. Directly in front of us, the large two-masted schooner tied up right here. You'll notice that it's called the Western Union. And this is the last working schooner or tall boy to have been built here in Key West. It was built for the Western Union Company. I gotta come back and see that, man. Oh, great! There you go. I was just chuckling at what you said. You made the joke there. That's the Grand Wizard of the Conch Republic, for those of you who have heard that story already. Hi! Now, as I was talking about the Western Union, that ship was built for the Western Union Company. That's the ship that laid the telegraph cable between the United States and Cuba and maintained it for many, many years. Unfortunately, they had to remove that cable in 1974. That's when Fidel Castro took the reins of Cuba. Now, the lane we're driving down right now is Lazy Way Lane. The locals, however, simply refer to this as Lazy Way Shops down here. We're going to pass directly in front of a group of little tiny shops. It is very quaint, very reminiscent of the 60s. It looks like several of these people didn't even open today. Now, for those of you who might be so inclined, coming up on the left, folks, you can get married right there. There's the chapel by the sea, and that is a legitimate wedding chapel, so don't do it unless you really mean it. Now, folks, if you're looking for the best key lime pie on the island, I'd like to show you where you can get some very good key lime pie. As I make this right-hand turn, look to the left, the yellow building on the corner with the green shutters, the Key West Key Lime Shop. Now, you can buy key lime pie right here, buy the slice, buy the pie, or you can destroy a perfectly good diet right here. As I make this left-hand turn, look at the first window around the corner at the large sign. It talks about key lime pie on a stick dipped in chocolate. It's absolutely habit-forming right there. Now, I need to give you a little bit of an advance warning. Right here, we're just about 5 minutes away from Mallory Square. At that point, we'll pause for the cause. I need to let you know this because if you're interested in continuing your tours, folks, I need to tell you you're actually going to be changing cars at Mallory Square. Now, on the far left-hand corner of this intersection, the little white building with all the windows, is the Key West Aloe Fragrance and Cosmetic Factory. That's where they manufacture all those aloe vera-based products, lotions, gels, cosmetics, and then they in fact ship those throughout the entire world. Now, if you'd like to watch their process, their laboratory is behind the glass wall. They're very nice people right there. They have no problems with you coming in simply to watch. Coming up also in this block, also again on the left, this large red brick building is Key West's very first city hall, built in 1891. As we pass the building, look through this open gate up this beautiful wrought iron filigree staircase inside the building. Right there. Now, on the second floor of that building is where we still hold our town meetings, even today, 107 years later. On this left-hand corner, you can see what this is. This is Sloppy Joe's Bar, and folks, they've already got a 2-hour head start on you. They started their party right there at 12 o'clock noon. They'll take that all the way up until 4 o'clock in the morning, just like they do 7 days a week. Now that is, however, only 363 days a year because they close early at Sloppy's on Christmas and Thanksgiving. That's when they close it too. Now, one thing I haven't told you about Sloppy's, that's not the original. That's also coming up on the left, this yellow building today known as Captain Tony's Saloon. That's the original Sloppy Joe's, and right inside there is where Jimmy Buffett was actually discovered. Jimmy used to play his guitar and sing right there, in fact, for $10 a night. That was Sloppy Joe's from 1933 to 1937. Back then, Sloppy Joe Russell's landlord raised his rent at $1 a week. He got all the boys together, they picked up everything they could physically carry, and overnight moved Sloppy's to where it is today. Now on your immediate left, that's John James Audubon Home and Gardens. That's been voted one of Key West's best attractions, so you might keep that in mind. And lastly, on the far left, the large tan building is the Mel Fisher Maritime Treasure Exhibit. Inside that building, Mr. Fisher has $400 million worth of treasure on display, and he will let you pick up a 16-pound gold bar. Now looking straight out the front windshield, the large wooden building in front of us is the Shipwreck Historian. That's a museum with an interactive guided tour dedicated to the industry which made Key West the richest city in America for almost 50 years. At the end of that brick road on our left, the white building with the blue trim is the Key West Aquarium. Now they do in fact have guided tours through the aquarium. They've just completed their 1 o'clock tour. Their next guided tour is in fact at 3. If you'd like to take that show in before you continue your tour, folks, you've actually got enough time to do that. The trolleys depart from this square on our left-hand side right here every 30 minutes, right on the hour and on the half hour, all the way up until 6 p.m. this evening. So unless you've got some very specific plans, you've got a lot of time you can take up until 6 o'clock. I'd like to show you something I think is a must-see not only for visitors but locals as well, and it's free. I like to talk about free things when I can. On the far right-hand corner behind that wrought iron fence is a brand new, newly dedicated sculpture garden. If you decide to walk there, you'll find dozens of bronze busts on display of the most influential people here throughout the last 160 years. Now also the large centerpiece in the middle depicts the actual purpose of shipwrecking, ladies and gentlemen. That was to save lives. Now I would like to thank you for being my guest this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed the tour I've given you as much as I enjoy giving them. I do in fact have way too much fun up here in this chair. However, if you would, please allow me to be the first one off the trolley. Somebody might have a question about something, and honestly I can better answer your questions from right outside the door. Thank you, folks.
Connie, everybody, from Connecticut. If you see her on the street, she drinks pirate punches, right? And so buy her one, will you? She's only at 35, but she's handling it very well. Yeah, and if you want to... So you walk through, that's where you find Harry Truman's Presidential Museum. The building on your right side, some of you might see the red and white sign hanging up. You're looking at the birthplace of Pan Am. It was also the first ticket office. First flight left Key West October 28, 1927. It's a bar and a restaurant called Kelly's. Good food. Kelly McGillis, the actress, she owns and operates it. She was in Top Gun, Witness. There's a green and white mansion coming up on your right, which is the Dr. Joseph Yates Porter House. Dr. Porter's quarantine laws that help eradicate the disease of yellow fever. Today it's a coffee and cigar lounge. It's a seance theater, you know, so if you want to talk to somebody on the other side, maybe somebody still owes you money, you can wake them up. Right here. Yeah. Girl, I want to make you sweat. That's what it sounds like, don't it? Sweat till you can't sweat anymore. This is Duval Street that we're crossing over. Y'all got my way. Watch out, watch out. Hey, get the way. Hey, all right. We're going to travel down Duval Street.